So the third book that's coming out is The Wolf Wants In. Do I have that correct?
Yeah,
And when is that going to be available?
comes out August 6th.
August 6th. Okay. Awesome. And is there any way you could give us a quick summary of that book?
Yeah, it's partly inspired by my own brother's death. My
Hmm.
brother died in 2015, and we still don't really know quite exactly what happened to him. And I started writing this story about a woman who had sort of a similar experience of losing this close family member, losing her brother. And after the death, starting to uncover all these things and wondering, she thought they were so close, but there was so much she didn't know. And there were all these secrets. And she's trying to delve into that to figure out what happened to him and how he
Hmm.
died. And it's set in a small rural farming community in the Midwest that's been ravaged by the opioid epidemic. So that's kind of the backdrop for the story. And
Okay.
so, yeah, it's just another kind of dark, suspenseful Midwestern thriller.
Hmm. So there's some very personal elements to it. Then it sounds like.
Yeah.
What was that like to write? Was that cathartic or was that more difficult?
I think it was a little bit difficult because obviously I didn't want to write the real story
Yeah.
of my brother. It's fictionalized. It just kind of sparked from that. But you do go through so much examination when you're thinking that through. But for me, it was nice in one way because I was able to write a story like that and find the answers and find resolution.
Right.
Novel. So it's like I may not have that in real life, but it was cathartic, I think, in a way to be able to wrap that up on paper.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to read it. I
Oh,
have
thank
it. I have it reminder, or have you followed on Amazon? So it'll send me an email when it comes out.
you.
Writing as an activity, does it energize you or exhaust you?
I mean, I like to write. I don't like to write all the time. People complain about writing, but yeah, I think it's energizing, especially the part where the ideas are new and fresh. You're getting it all out there. I think I get more exhausted towards the very end of the process when you've been through so many rounds of editing and you've been through the book so many times. And I mean, by the end, I don't ever want to see the book again. It seems like the worst book ever written. I don't really think it should be published. I don't ever want to see it again or hear about it again. And then it comes out, and then you spend the next year going around talking about the book to
Yeah.
everyone. So, uh, yeah, but then, a few years after it's out, I was at some event and they were reading this section from The Weight of Blood, and I didn't recognize it at all, but I'm listening to it. And I'm like, that is not bad.
Yeah.
What was I so embarrassed about? It's okay. It just takes me some time.
The life cycle of a book is so interesting,
Yeah.
and I don't think a lot of people outside of the business or whatever you want to call it really understand. I mean, to them, it's like, oh, it's a collection of pages between two slightly thicker pages. you
Yeah.
know, but there's so much sweat, blood, and tears that go into each one of those. So I mean, even if I'm reading a book I don't like, I still have immense respect for the person who wrote it because I know what it takes to to
Yeah.
go through that process and get that out, and not just that, but to have the courage to put yourself out there. That's no small thing when you're dealing with an art as personal as writing is, because as you alluded to earlier, I think there's a little bit of the author in each book they put out.
Yeah.
It's tough to get away from that. So you mentioned stuff you read as a kid. What sort of books do you read now, or do you have time?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the books that I read now are sent to me to write blurbs for.
Okay.
So a lot of those are mystery, suspense, thriller sort of books. And I really like those too. I like literary fiction. I like science fiction. I like nonfiction. I really like to read widely when I have time. But as you mentioned, it's kind of hard when you're writing your own book and then trying to read these other books to blurb and then try to find time uh, to read something you would really pick on your own. But luckily, a lot of the books I read to blurb are excellent. So
Well,
I,
that's
I
good.
still get to read good things.
Have you ever had a book sent to you to blurb? You're like, I can't do this.
Oh, well, when I was very new and fresh at this, I was sent a book to blurb, and I felt like it was a debut author. And I felt like, oh, people were nice and blurb for me. I need to blurb for anyone I can blurb for.
Mhm.
And I'm reading this book okay, it was very much not my type of book. It had some very graphic, strange, sexual stuff in it, kind of. It was this huge thriller. The movie rights had already been sold. It was going to be the next big thing. It was a huge deal. And I'm like, well, I read it. I'll think of something to say about it. And I didn't lie. I mean, I said the nice things that I could think of to say about it. And then when the book comes out, I am the only author on the back cover that blurbed this. I mean, it was blurbed by a couple of magazines and like a bit more major reviewers or something, but I was the only author. I'm like, oh, I can see how this happened. So going forward, I mean, if there's something good I can say about the book, I definitely will. But if it's something that is so far off my track, now I realize, oh, I don't have to do that. You know, it's okay. Sometimes you just can't do it all. So, yeah.
No. So are these books sent to you by the publisher, or do authors send them to you, or how do they?
Yeah, they're generally sent by the publisher, and oftentimes they'll go from that publisher to my agent. My agent sends them on to me, or they get my information from the agent to send directly to me. But authors who are in the mystery thriller world, you know, they might contact me through social media or something like that, just to ask first if I might be interested. And it's always nice if they have a reason for asking you, like maybe their work is similar, or they liked your work and care about your opinion or something. But I mean, some people aren't nice about asking.
Really? But, what would they say?
Oh, they're just like, hey, I need some blurbs. Will you blurb it? You know, it's like they don't know who you are. They haven't read your work. They just saw that, oh, you have some books out or something.
Or it's clearly a form letter that you tell like, they've sent it to about 50 other people.
You don't feel bad about saying no to those. But anyone asks, I try to blurb anyone that I can who is, nicely asking and needs a blurb. I try. So,
what other author friends are you friends with? For example, I know that in some circles, or in some publishing circles, for certain publishing houses, there are groups of those authors for that publisher, and they kind of hang around like virtually together.
Yeah.
Are there any particular authors that you communicate with?
Yeah, I mean, it's very nice, especially in the mystery world. Everyone is so friendly and so welcoming. And so you go to these conventions and you meet so many other fellow writers, and there's a huge group of us on Facebook, but there's a group of women in particular that we've done some panels together, and we'll talk about, the industry and that sort of thing. And I can't even list them all because there's a large group of us, but it's like Jill Orr, she writes kind of funny, light mysteries. She lives here in Columbia. She's in my writing group. Okay. And then there are women from all over. Julia Dahl, who's in New York, Karen Ketcher, who's out in Pennsylvania, Emily Carpenter, Kimberly Bell, who are down in Atlanta area. I mean, there's so many of us, and it's so nice to be able to have this group of writer friends to share the experience and ask questions of each other. And so that's one of the nicest parts of being in the mystery community.
You think they make you, or you make each other better writers? Like, do you give each other tips? Do you send scenes like, I don't know how this works, feedback?
Yeah, I've read for several different people, different friends, and they've read for me just sometimes the entire manuscript, sometimes just chapters or parts of revisions, and that's incredibly helpful just to get a little insight, because once you're so deep into your manuscript, after point.
Do you ever? Well, I guess you sort of mentioned this when you heard a bit of your book being read back to you, but do you yourself ever go back and read any of your own work?
I do, but like I said, it takes a few years before I want to look at it at all. But yeah, I start to develop a fondness after a while. Like Arrowwood, I finally was going back now. I had to go back through it for something, and it's like, oh my gosh, I really have this special feeling for that book, being set in Iowa, where my family was from and all of that, and that whole nostalgia thing. So yeah, after I get some distance, then I can go back.
So you're living in Missouri now. Did I hear you say that you grew up in Iowa?
Yeah, I lived in Iowa till I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
I moved to Missouri, but my grandparents and all my cousins and everyone lived in Iowa for my whole life. So.
And Arrowwood is set. What part of Iowa is it? The southern Iowa? Am I
Southeastern,
remembering that right? I think that's
right?
what the
Yeah,
book, yeah.
yeah, in the
Okay.
southeastern part by the river.
So, picture this. You feel uninspired and you've sat in front of the computer for an hour or so without conquering any words. How do you get your creativity flowing again?
Really, for me, a change of scenery is the best thing. If I've been working at the coffee shop and it's not working, I go work from home. I'll go outside, take a little walk, take a shower, and if none of that works, I make homemade fudge.
Ooh.
And
I haven't tried that one yet. That's a good one.
well, it works pretty well because you're just stirring, 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 and while you're stirring, your mind kind of wanders and can solve problems in the manuscript, that sort of thing, and then you get to eat the fudge. So
Well, to me, that would just that could open up some very. That may not be good for me, but
it's not good for me or
I can
or
definitely see the appeal. Do you ever listen to any music while you write?
really only if I'm at the coffee shop.
Mm.
Sometimes I'll listen to music that has sort of a mood I'm going for with the book, but I don't like to listen to it while I'm actually writing. If I could have either dead silence or white noise, that's usually the best for
Mm.
me.
Yeah, I like to turn a fan on a lot of times, and I don't know why. I mean, I use a fan when I go to sleep too, so maybe that's why. It's just when I access certain parts of my brain, I need.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's silence. I find it gets distracting, and that makes no sense to me whatsoever. Like I don't know how absolute silence could be distracting, but I don't know. Maybe I can hear my own thoughts too much.
Yeah.
My inner critic or inner editor, I can hear them too much. Like that's terrible. So I don't know. Need something to kind of drown them out.
That makes sense.
What is one thing you think that has improved most about your writing from, say, the first book to the new one that's coming up?
I mean, I think that's hard to say. I feel like, I learn different things each time as I go through, and I probably forget half the things I learned from the time before. I feel like I'm always just, stumbling around and learning things. I do think I've gotten a little more confidence in the fact that, okay, I will be able to pull this out in the end. I will be able to do this because I think, with the first book, I had no idea if I'd be able to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know what the end was going to be. I didn't know what was going to happen. With the second one, I was thinking, what if I only had one book in me? What if I really can't write this second book? And by the time the third one came around, it was like, I realize now that that whole roller coaster of self-doubt and then feeling good about it, I mean, that's normal. And it's just a cycle that I go through. And that in the end, if I just sit down and do the work, if I do the work, I can get it done. And
Mm-hmm.
if I can get that draft done, I can go back and I can polish it up. So it's kind of just the confidence that I can do it, that I can get through this process, even though I still have those days, every other day where I really doubt my skills and my abilities and whether I can finish. I know deep down that I can get there.
Right. Well, the evidence is sitting on your bookshelf. It's you've kind of disproved your own doubts in a way. Can I finish a book? Can I finish the follow-up? It's
Yeah.
you've answered those questions, so that's awesome. Do you ever hide any secrets in your books that only a few people are going to find, like little Easter eggs that people close to you, the only ones are going to know about?
I do. Like sometimes there are little things in there that I don't make the connection just blatantly obvious so that someone might notice it and some people don't notice it. And I think it's fun, to see who does or doesn't. But I also now I've got a couple things in this latest book. One of them is something that came from a conversation in a book club that I was visiting that I thought was really funny. And so I told them, I'm like, okay, when you read it, see if you recognize this. You're going to recognize something from you guys in this book. And I knew they'd be fine with it because we talked about it, kind of in the book club, but just some little things like that. And of course, my sister will always be like, oh my gosh, you had this in the book. And she's like, that tiny little seed of an idea. She's like, that really happened. And then you twisted it all up and you made it, into something horrible. Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do.
I think that's, kind of why it's so difficult to answer the question, like how much of truth is in a certain book? Because I've received that question, and it's always difficult to answer because it is such a labyrinthine process of going in and putting it all together, and there's a grain of truth, but it's, as you say, twisted in our case, usually into something horrible. But yeah. it's a really, really fascinating process. Do you believe in writer's block?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you can go through times where you're stuck, for sure. I mean, I think most writers probably go through that, but I don't think you can use it as an excuse. I mean, if you have deadlines to meet and that sort of thing, yes, you can get blocked, but you just have to push through, keep going, keep putting words on the page. They might not be the greatest words, but usually if you just can keep going. So yeah, I think everybody gets it, but I think the people who use it as an excuse to not write, at that point, it's just an excuse.
Yeah.
You gotta, if you really, really, really want to write, you just have to find a way to break through it. It's not always easy. It's not fun, but I think it's doable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, it's such a convenient excuse, and in a weird, like, twisted way, it's almost a romantic one. Like, oh, I'm a tortured artist and I'm blocked.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah. So I always like to ask that question because there are so many varying viewpoints. Some people come on very strongly on one side or the other, and then some, like you, are more like, yeah, it exists, but you can break through it, which I think is the more realistic viewpoint. What is one thing that you would give up to become a better writer? Not that you need to become a better writer, but there's a part of us, each of us, that wishes we could be a little better, I think.
Yeah. What would I give up?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I gave up a lot, trying to spend time on working to become a better writer. Like, I remember, giving up time with my kids and that sort of thing. So I feel like that was probably the biggest real sacrifice I've done. I remember scraping together some money, to hire a babysitter because I was unemployed at the time, to watch my daughter so that I could try to work on this book that I didn't know if I would ever finish or sell. And I look out the window. She's in the backyard with the sitter. She falls off of our swing set and broke her arm.
Oh, no.
And I was just thinking, it's like, why am I, I'm taking this time away from my kids to put all my energy into something that might go nowhere. Is that really a wise thing? But it's like, to be willing to do that, that was hard for me. And I felt like that was something that I gave up.
Yeah.
And I also gave up when I was trying to write The Weight of Blood. I gave up anything I cared about that was not critical, like my family or my work. I stopped watching trashy TV, which I love TV. I gave that up. I gave up reading magazines, reading for pleasure. I really gave up everything. Sleep. I mean, I gave up everything to work on that book. So that's what I think.
Yeah. Actually, I know I said that was the last question, but it's something I remember that I wanted to ask you about because it's something you mentioned in Montezuma at the writers' conference up there about you were writing the first book, and something about, I think like your husband would ask like how the process was going or something like that. Could you tell us that story?
Yeah. So, I had lost my job while I was pregnant with my second daughter. It was right before Christmas. So I'm about to have 2 kids. I'm trying to go on job interviews and all of this. And it was pretty much a nightmare. I was not interested in any of these jobs. They didn't really pay enough to cover childcare for 2 kids. It was kind of bad. And so for Christmas, my husband gave me a laptop. He's like, if we can do this, stay home from work for like a year with the kids and see if you can write a book. And so I really felt that pressure, and I didn't want to tell him, I don't have an idea for the book. I don't have a plot. I don't have a story. It's like, I got nothing. I have nothing to go on. So I would sit there on my laptop on the couch, the kids are in bed, and he'd come over and he'd be looking over my shoulder. He's like, "Oh, what's going?" I'm like, "Oh, it's going great. I'm typing. It's going great." I didn't want him to be like, "Okay, back to the interviews. Come on, you gotta get it done." So, and he would be like, "Well, how much longer do you think before it's done?"
Oh no.
Oh, I have no idea since I don't know what's happening or what the story is. But yeah, I got there. It took me probably about a year to get the first draft done. Which, looking back, I'm amazed I did that with the lack of sleep and baby and all of that.
That's incredible.
But yeah, I wanted it bad enough, I guess, that I made that happen. And luckily he was supportive of that while I worked. So
yeah, well, that's great. No, I mean, yeah, it's an incredible feat just to finish a book, but you hit it out of the park. So, I mean, that is quite a feat indeed. Well, that's all I have for you. I want to say thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun. I'm glad we got to talk a little bit more.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, maybe sometime we can have you back again and chat more and find out what you're up to.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks a lot, Laura.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye. One thing I did want to let everybody know about is that the Games and Writer Show now has a website, which you can access by going to guessgamesandwriters.com.
Oh, I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty incredible. There it is, and there are actually supposed to be graphics down here. For some reason, they do exist online. For some reason, they're not showing up on the feed. Meh. So this is the main page. You can go to the videos, and all the shows are there. And if you click on one of them, we'll bring you up in a neat little player page. Thermy! And
We love
watch there.
Thermy.
We love Thermy. Blog, which I have not talked to Scott about this. So I'm going to spring this on him right now. But would you like to be added as a writer on this here blog? It would not require that you write on this blog, but you would have access to it if you happen to think of something hilarious.
That actually happened once, so sure.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not expected to write on it, but if you
Try and stop me, Craig.
Yes, if you wanted to, you're certainly welcome to do so. So this is where that will be. I'd like to keep this updated beyond just simply, you know, here's the next post, because you can find this about 5 other places, which I'll cover in a minute. This is the list of guests that we've had in order of first appearance on the show. See, Scott, number 1.
Number 1, baby.
Yeah. And then you can see all the other guys. David Taylor, he's coming up today, actually. Tonight, his show. Well, actually, no, not tonight, because this will be broadcast later. But in the evening of the 6th, his episode was played.
Not that this is being taped on the 6th or anything.
No, totally live.
Yeah.
Totally. Upcoming guests, though. Laura McHugh, Angelique Lamore, daughter of Louis L'Amour.
That just still blows my mind that we're going to get to talk to her. Yeah.
Crazy. And then Aaron Bunce.
And then Aaron Bunce, which is even better.
And his has already been recorded, and it went really well. And so I think you'll all be interested to watch that. And then our sponsors, of course, Pinnacle Studio. You can read about that. And if you use these links to purchase the software, then we do get a cut of that. Full disclosure, and also thank you in advance if you decide to do that. It's good software, and you'll be helping the show out as well. Contact page, you can give us a shout, let us know what you think of the show, or if you're somebody who wants to appear on the show, feel free to drop us a line and request that, and we'll get back to you. And what's kind of neat is up here on the top right, there is a little media player. It's an audio, so it's the audio only of a certain show, and this one I have Eric Therms loaded up, where you can click on that, and as you're browsing the site, you can listen to a show in purely audio. Let's see if I can get that to work. Oh, and there it goes. There's a plane there. That's the old opening. Hey there, everybody. Welcome. And that's my Weasley little voice. All right. So that's the site as it stands right now. More will be added. iTunes, by the way. If you prefer to get your stuff on iTunes, you can do that in video. You can go over there and grab it and have it served directly to you. And also, speaking of sponsorship, if you would like to sponsor the Games and Writer Show yourself, you certainly can. If you have a service or, say, a book or something like that you want advertised, you can just drop us a line in the contact. Let us know. There are 3 different places for ads that you can run. You can make your choice there, or you can get them all. And so you can sponsor an entire show at a discount. So let us know if you'd like to do that. And, of course, stuff goes live on Facebook, and this is the link to that. You can pop over to the Facebook page and be notified when new videos go live. So that is the website, and everybody can check that out. Pretty excited that's up now. Now that means our legit.
Yep.
Legit.
Well, that and the fact that we're on iTunes.
I know. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to get on there because of a few technical things, but I did find a workaround, and it worked fine. And they took us without any problem. Didn't squawk about it at all.
So far. They probably haven't watched it.
Yeah, they haven't watched it. They're watching. What have we done? Take them away.